Hey everyone, welcome back to the Jay's Fifth Down podcast. I'm your host Jay, and once again here talking a little football with you here on this Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's out there, I guess, to everybody. But today our focus is mainly going to be on the NFL. Got some news coming in this morning, of course, after the Super Bowl, and so now the official league year is starting for 2023. So everybody's getting ready for the offseason free agency, the draft coming up in April, free agency in March. Got a lot of stuff to cover, but right now, today, we're going to be talking about the last full hiring cycle for the NFL coaches being made as far as, the head coaching openings. Jonathan Gannon, who has been the Eagles defense coordinator the last two seasons, also worked with the Colts as a defensive backs coach from 2018 through 2020, has been hired as the Arizona Cardinals' new head coach. Their team announced this morning, so Jonathan Gannon is headed to Arizona to take control of the team there after they fired Cliff Kingsbury earlier this postseason, and so now Jonathan Gannon, day or so after the Super Bowl, is now going to be head coach in Arizona. And Eagles also lost their offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, to the Indianapolis Colts. He has been hired as the new head coach there. So the Philadelphia Eagles have lost both of their coordinators in the same day. So tough news there. I'm sure a lot of Eagles fans are happy about Jonathan Gannon leaving, considering the defensive performance that they witnessed in the Super Bowl there in that second half. So a lot of Philly fans were happy to see that this morning, to see that news come out here. But personally, to me, looking at these hires, I think these are two franchises that needed a new, direction, new face, head into a new direction, right? And you look at the Cardinals, they have not really lived up to the potential that the talent on their team shows. You look at their team on paper, they should be a playoff team. And they were in 2021, but they just got completely demolished by the Rams in the wild card, right? So looking at that, and then this year it just wasn't a good year for them. Offensively, had a lot of just miscommunications, and a lot of penalties they were struggling with, and the play calling was inopportune at times, and it was just a lot. It was a big struggle. For these teams this year. You look at the Colts as well. I mean, they had a very bad year on their standards. They bring in another quarterback, bring in a veteran, Matt Ryan, through trade from Atlanta, hoping that the team could get something going there, and they really couldn't. They just couldn't get anything going there at all. So, very pretty bad year for the Colts as well. Yet they fired Frank Reich, who is now the head coach in Carolina. So you bring in Shane Steichen, who's a guy who led a pretty successful Eagles offense this year with Jalen Hurts. And, last year they were middle of the pack, of course. Hurts still coming to his own, but they made great moves getting Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown over there. And when you have those kind of weapons at your disposal, it's amazing what you can do as an offensive coordinator with your schemes and with your play calls. And so for them to be able to use that there, to his advantage for Shane Steichen was huge there. And now you're going to Indianapolis, where the weapons aren't as formidable as they were in Philly. Obviously, the quarterback situation is still very questionable, so to say, and we don't really know what's going to happen there. What the Colts going to do? A lot of talk is they might trade up with the Bears to get somebody number one overall. The Bears do hold the number one pick in the draft, and we'll get to them later on in the show, but because they're going to be our season in review team for today's podcast. But honestly, the Colts are in a situation right now where the window is closing. You got guys like Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, Shaquille Leonard on that defense, DeForest Buckner, guys, who are getting a little bit older now. They've been in the league a couple years, and they're hoping like, okay, we win at some point. We got to win games. We got to get to the postseason. We got to make the playoffs. We got to win the Super Bowl. That's what they're hoping for. And so they're hoping that Shane Steichen can be this guy to lead this team, and hoping that he can make him in the front office can make the right moves to put them in the best position to win football games. That's what the hope is there in Indianapolis. And I think it's a good hire. It just has to be, we have to just see what happens. seeing what they have with Jalen Hurts, I'd imagine that Steichen probably going to lean towards more of a mobile quarterback to use, because certainly that's what he liked, using in Philly with Hurts, that some of those QB runs, sneaking those in there, the RPO action a lot, if it's not there, hand it off, or sometimes they do an RPO where, or, they'll do a, like I say, yeah, you fake it to the running back, pull it back, nothing's there, take off, right? And so they designed the different blocking schemes and things of that nature to cater to their quarterback, with Jalen Hurts, what they did in Philly. You saw that a lot in the Super Bowl, a lot of QB runs, a lot of RPOs, a lot of a lot of go routes down the sideline. Some crossers over the middle as well. So Shane Steichen likes those type of offensive play calls, and that's what he's going to bring to this Colts offense, which is why you think that they might lean towards trading up in the draft, possibly to get them a mobile quarterback, maybe a guy like a Bryce Young or a C.J. Stroud or whoever it might be. That's plenty of time to talk about that as we move on throughout the offseason. But yeah, I think it's interesting hires for both teams. And for the Cardinals' sake, again, Jonathan Gannon. I mean, his defense had the best defensive line, the best pass rush in the league this year. Finished with 78 sacks total, including postseason. So I mean, that's really good. And the defense for the Colts is they got some great talented players on that team. Like I mentioned, DeForest Buckner, Shaquille Leonard, Kenny Moore, Isaiah Rogers, Stephon Gilmore, of course, at that cornerback spot. You got some veterans over there, some youngins, Grover Stewart, on the defensive line, Quiddy Pay. So the Colts have got some players, and so it's just a matter of can they find that right guy to put it all together, as a head coach from stemming down to his coordinators, just overall just laying out the scheme. Like this is what I want to do defensively. This is how I want this defense to go. Like this is how we're going to attack the football, and this is how it's going to be run. And so if you're a Colts fan, you're hoping that you don't see what you saw in the second half of the Super Bowl out of your defense next season or moving on. You hope you don't see that, and so that's what is going to be key for the Colts. It's the only thing. Jonathan Gannon tends to get a little simplistic with his play calling, and it kind of hurt them in the Super Bowl. I'll say that, so that's the only thing I'd be concerned about if I'm a Colts fan. But other than that, I mean, it's a good hire. So yeah, like I said, the Indianapolis Colts and the Arizona Cardinals both found their head coaches now, so that those vacancies are filled. And that's really about it as far as head coaches. There are no more vacancies left. Everybody's going to the teams that going. You got D'Amico Ryan's in Houston. Frank Reich is in Carolina. Shane Steichen in Indianapolis, Jonathan Gannon in Arizona, but in other around the NFL news, former Georgia offensive coordinator Todd Monken has been hired as the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator. So this is, a lot of questions were, arising as to whether Monken would leave Georgia after the success that they've had there, winning 2 national titles in a row, back to back, and, just having that a great offensive system being set up there, and a lot of questions. And honestly, I was questioning myself because, you lost Stetson Bennett to the draft, and you're not really sure too much about these quarterbacks, that you have coming up, Carson Beck or Brock Vandegrift, or whoever it might be, at the quarterback position. That's going to be a big competition in just heading into spring practice. So I expect that to be a really tight tight competition there in spring practice. See who's going to get that starting nod for the Bulldogs next season. And I think that uncertainty right there may be what pushed Monken to come to the NFL, to come back to the NFL. He wanted to be somewhere where he knows what his quarterback situation is going to be, so he can know how to prepare for it and scheme around it. And so now simultaneously, at the same time, you go to the Ravens where the quarterback situation, we don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to extend Lamar Jackson? Are they going to franchise tag him? Are they going to trade him? So that's another questionable thing. Why would Monken choose the Ravens? As far as because you don't know. I mean, then again, you have the chance if Jackson does come back to coach an MVP, and kind of help change around that scheme, the offensive scheme, to kind of cater it to Jackson, but at the same time add more elements of the passing game in there to help keep defenses off of Jackson so much, because of his ability to run the football. And so that's an interesting dynamic I think that Todd Monken brings to the NFL, because you see now, like, the NFL is bringing a lot of college style offenses and type of plays into the league, and so with Monken being in both best of both worlds here, he's had the opportunity to learn at the collegiate level. Georgia, especially particularly where his most success was, because it's a different game at the college level, but just those bringing that, some interesting elements here and there, right? And implementing that into the NFL, it's interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic when you study it, and you're seeing a lot more of that now. A lot of the RPOs more, the Wildcat stuff like that. You're seeing a lot more of that in the NFL than which is more. These are more college type of plays, even the personnel groups, and they're bringing that into the league now, So it's really interesting to me, and I think Monken is a good hire for them. Obviously, they lose Greg Roman, but you bring in Monken, who was an experienced coordinator, of course, was OC for the Bucks, as in the Browns, in his tenure in the NFL, so he's got that NFL experience. So right now, the big thing is just the question is like, what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson? Is he going to get traded? Is he going to get extended, or is he going to sign that franchise tag? Which I don't think he'll do. To me, like, I don't know, like, from what I hear, the Ravens and Lamar, like that, what they've thrown at him, like, he doesn't feel like it's enough. Or he doesn't feel like I'm feeling. I think he's expecting more, something similar to what Deshaun Watson received from the Browns. When he went there, that $230 million deal, 4 year, $230 million deal, guaranteed fully money. And it's like, okay, and this Jackson's a guy who has played, more recently than Deshaun Watson has, right? This guy is an MVP, a guy, he's the only reason he might have been struggling last couple of years as far as maybe his passing games, because he has had little to no consistent production from the wide receiver position, and it's very hard for a quarterback to, of course, obviously produce when you have there is no consistency. There's no success from that position. The Ravens really have had a number one wide receiver since Lamar Jackson has been the quarterback. To be honest, he really has not had one. Marquise Brown wasn't really. He never really took that next step. And they traded him away to Arizona. So I don't. Rashad Bateman's been hurt a lot. I mean, they need to find a number one receiver for one thing, and I expect them to look after that in the draft or free agency through trades, whatever. Like they gotta get him a number one receiver. They gotta give him that go to guy, that number X receiver, letter X receiver that you can, and somebody can help take the pressure on the defense off of Lamar Jackson. Somebody that can send an extra defender towards that receiver. Maybe that helps frees up Jackson in the running game. Just little different elements you can add in there. And it's going to be interesting to see how Baltimore attacks that moving forward. But the big thing is, of course, like I mentioned, what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson. So that's just something to keep an eye on as we move throughout the offseason here, right? And see what happens there. But as far as our around the NFL news, that pretty much wraps us up. Again, like I mentioned yesterday on the other podcast with Rusty Bird, the Chiefs are Super Bowl champs. Eagles, they're looking forward to next season, hoping to be back, and win. But it's going to be hard losing your two coordinators on the offense and defensive side of football. So we'll see how they attack that in the offseason and what they do to improve and who they're going to bring in to fill in for those guys. So, but our next segment up is the season in review. And for our season in review team for today's podcast is the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears finished the season 3-14. They finished last in points allowed defensively with 32 given up. I think also like 29th in yards allowed. They hold the number one pick currently in the draft. So this has been a very, very interesting topic among the NFL lately, with the Chicago Bears just holding that coveted number one pick, right? And this, a lot of talk about, are some of these teams going to trade up? Could you see the Colts possibly trade up? Like I mentioned earlier, could they trade up? Could the Panthers trade up? They're also in the quarterback market here. The Las Vegas Raiders. You're right. You don't know what's going to happen with Derek Carr. So it's a lot going on, and it's a lot that could happen. And I don't know. Like I don't. Obviously, the Bears have made it very clear that they're going to roll with Justin Fields moving forward as their starting quarterback, as they should. He improved from year one to year two, not by a drastic amount, but improvement. He showed steady improvement. And with a team like the Bears, I mean, you're not contending right now. You won't be for another couple of years. So this is a good chance to see what your quarterback has and see if he's going to take those drastic steps to improve and just continue to get better and just um, you know just become more acclimated to the NFL and the different metrics within that system there. And it also it hurts when you don't really have a number one receiver either. I mean, Darnell Mooney had a great season. He's a solid receiver. They traded for Chase Claypool. That didn't really work. Claypool didn't really, you know. I mean, then again, the offensive system for Chicago basically revolved around Justin Fields running the football, and like some dink and dunk passes here and there to his receivers. But like other than that, they really wanted Justin Fields to tote the rock. And now the Bears have got to be careful not to do that, or else you're going to turn him into the next Cam Newton. You got to get this guy some receivers like they did with Jalen Hurts in Philly. They went out and got him AJ Brown. Traded for him. Like that's their type of receiver you need to go make a trade for. Like Chase Claypool, not so much. I mean, Claypool had a solid rookie season, but since then he kind of just has dipped production, and I don't think that you know I didn't think that move was a good move for the Bears to make. But that's what they felt. That's what they needed to do, and they went and made the trade, and they got him over there. So you're hoping that Claypool can get some more looks next year in offense and some more production. Him and Mooney out there. I mean, maybe you get you another receiver late in the draft or whatever. That's something else to look into. But honestly, the Bears just disappointing season for them this year. Disappointing season, but they didn't have high expectations. Obviously, the Chicago fans, you guys, your expectations weren't super high, but you expected to be a little bit better. I mean, they won 3 games, but they lost 14 games, and that can't happen. So I think they need to make some changes offensively to what they do. Defensively, you traded Roquan Smith away to the Ravens. I mean, now you're trying to fill those holes. Like the Bears have a lot they need to address in the draft and free agency and through trades, just overall in the offseason market. They have a lot they need to address. Specifically the defensive line, and the offensive line. The game is always won in the trenches. The game is won in the trenches. Yeah, I will say this until the day I die. The game is won in the trenches, like you look at the Kansas City Chiefs. Their offensive line allowed 0 sacks in the Super Bowl. 0 sacks. Against a defensive line that was number one in the league. As far as the pressures and the sacks and just getting after you all game, and they didn't really do that at all. In the Super Bowl. So it and then like I said, and on the flip side of that, for the Eagles, the offensive line was really good. So that's your game is won in the trenches, and the Bears have got to upgrade that offensive line and that defensive line. You got to protect Justin Fields, and you've got to be able to get after the quarterback. That's got to be an emphasis. You have to get after the quarterback in today's league because it's a passing dominant league, and the teams are passing a good majority of the time. You've got to be able to get the quarterback on the ground, and so they need that number one pass rusher. I mean, it's hard to replace a guy like Khalil Mack, but you got to find that guy who's going to step up and get after the quarterback. They traded Robert Quinn to the Eagles. So some of the things that the Bears were doing, I didn't quite understand this past season. I just don't like the Claypool trade, the Roquan Smith trade, the Robert Quinn trade. I didn't quite get it. So it seems like they really wanted to commit to a rebuild. That's what it was seeming like, and they didn't want to put any of those guys through that. That's what it could have been, or it could have been something else. We don't fully know. But what I do know is that the Chicago has got a lot of things that they need to address when we're moving forward into this offseason, into the draft. Matt Eberflus and his staff has got a lot of work cut out for them this year. And Eberflus being a defensive guy, coming over from Indianapolis, the defense coordinator there, and, taking the head coaching job in Chicago after they fired Matt Nagy. Like, this is his team. This is his franchise. He's got to find a way for them to become formidable on both sides of the football, consistent on both sides of the football. If not spectacular, consistent. That way, every game, you're getting production out of those units, out of all 3 units, offense, defense, special teams. receivers, offensive line, you know, your running back. You got a good running back, duo with Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. Keep that going, and defensively, guy got the quarterback. Got to get pressure on the quarterback. That's what you need. So that's really my keys for the Bears. But I honestly like it's going to be a very interesting offseason. Like I said, all these coaching changes and people moving here and there and whatnot. It's just going to be interesting, like to see how these franchises attack the draft. Coming up and based on their team needs specifically. So as we move on throughout the offseason, we have you guys covered with everything you need to know, and all the moves, firings or trades, whatever. We're here at Jay's With Them. We got you covered. Make sure you guys subscribe, check us out, comment, share with your friends. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, wherever you can find us at. Follow us there, Jay's With Them Pod, and subscribe to us right here on YouTube. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your favorite podcast. That's where we're at. Thanks again. I'm your host, Jay. Thank you for joining us on the Jay's With Them Podcast.